we are born, as we've all said, with this innate desire to create, and it does so much for our heart and soul and body and mind, and then we're just conditioned that if we're not good or we can't render realistically, that it's not worth anything.
Hey everyone, welcome to Josette's Soul Salon, where we have weekly conversations that answer the question, what does it take to live a soul-expressed life? I'm your host, Josette Leblanc, and during this episode, I share a powerful roundtable discussion with three creative forces of nature, Hailey Tallman, Kristina Eisenhower, and Jordan Queior. Our unlived creativity is not benign. Creative energy is a force that moves through us and needs to be released. We're born creatives, and yet many of us feel blocked in our creative expression. And there's no one more qualified to help us understand how to get unblocked than these three creative souls. Hailey Tallman is an art therapist and women's empowerment coach. Jordan Queior is a business alignment coach and creativity guide. Kristina Eisenhower is a creative empowerment coach and energy alchemist. And the three of them together, well, they have an eye-opening way of putting life in perspective. During this episode, we explore what creativity is and the role of embodiment and intuition in accessing creativity. We also explore the healing potential of creativity, how to foster it, and the relationship between creativity, mental health, and the current paradigm shift away from toxic productivity. You'll want to listen to the end because that's when we explore how creativity could be the most important element in healing the state of the chaos we're experiencing on this planet. To connect with Hailey, Kristina, and Jordan, check the links in the show notes. And if you enjoy what you hear, make sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review. Now let's get into the salon. All right, I am so excited to have this soul salon conversation with the three of you today, Hailey, Jordan, and Kristina. Thank you so much for being here. So excited. Today, we're going to be talking about creativity, which is an important topic to the three of these women. And it's a conversation I've had with all of them individually. And so I'm just getting chills at the thought of getting them together to have a conversation around this topic. Let's just dive in. That's how I roll. I just like diving into the deep questions. Nothing fluffy around this. So the first question is, what does creativity mean to you? That's where we're going to start. What does creativity mean to you? Whoever feels like jumping in, go ahead.
From a broad perspective, we can sit there and be like, well, anybody's creative. Everybody is creating something. And I come from a world of, used to work in tech and used to work with a lot of engineers and project management and in recruiting. So you could say, well, the engineers are creative too. They're developing. They're creating amazing things. They're disrupting, whatever. But that's very left brain. It's very much logic. And so I think for me these days, creativity is all about engaging my right brain and just giving that strategy side, the left brain side, a break. So anything that's like engaging my right brain and rebalancing is like creativity to me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
I was going to jump in and say that for me, it's all those things that Jordan just said, but like for me, it's very spiritual. So to me, it's like synonymous with humanity. So now what I mean by that is, like, as Jordan said, we could say everybody's creative, and, a lot of people say they aren't, which always blows my mind. But to me, I believe in like a creator, okay? But not like God on a throne or something like that. But I believe that there's a creative source, and everything in the world is like nature. It's constantly creating, and humans have this ability to, for me, when we create, we are uniting, like we're attuning and aligning ourselves with creative source. And so it's it's something that to me it's like tragic that like I'm in Canada, we don't value it nearly enough. And people see it as this like fluff, fringe thing that it's like like, that's, crafting or, it's, to me, it's so much more than that. But yeah, I'll see what Kristina has to say.
Oh, you guys are spot on for sure. And this is just like so great. It's like round robin because right brain, that's mindedness kind of approach, or the creativity is a mindset, right? I believe that as well. And the same thing that any kind of creativity is a spiritual act. Definitely. It comes from within, from that spirit that you're called to create something. For me, so we've got the mind and we've got the spirit. I'm just going to throw in the body there in the sense that because we are human bodies, it is your birthright and your responsibility. So it's a responsibility to yourself, the way I see it, to express what makes you, right? So even though we've all just said we're all creative, nobody's excluded for sure, but it's the creative process and output, I think, that is as unique to you as your thumbprint and your signature, your voice or accent, whatever, your appearance, right? No two of us are alike, right? So that's what creativity means to me. I never separate real life from creative life. It is all your life. So that's why I look at creativity.
Yeah. Okay, so the physical sense that you're expressing is like, as a physical being, you are creative, and also, does it also relate to the things you create, like that material element?
I think it's the act. So like creative, I like to think of as creative as a verb, right? Because it's the act of creating your life, whatever that process looks like, whatever the output is, whatever the spirit that moves you to do such an act, that's creativity.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I can throw something in, like capitalism has turned creativity into being about what you create, right? Like the product. And then like there's the whole, are creativity and art synonymous? Like that's a whole other question and thing we could go into. But I find that in little polls I've taken here and there, art is much more intimidating for most people than the word creativity. There's a lot more like movement and space and wiggle room within the word creativity. I find most people will connect more quicker with creativity than they would with art. Do you guys find that? You women?
I love this question. Yeah. Yeah, Jordan, if you go ahead, if you have anything on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, because of capitalism mainly, and because of, how we're conditioned, we sit there and we start to really become too focused on the product. And I know for myself, when we talk about not valuing art or creativity, it's really and still is a process of reclamation of, taking back, giving myself permission to create. And for a long time, I didn't because, working in Silicon Valley where everything's about, creating a product to sell, it just didn't seem worth it. And that's really sad to get to that place and to think, creativity is not worth it because I don't have a plan for how to monetize this. And so it's been like a process for me of, creating creative practice in my own life and really focusing on the process. And that's what I help others with, is to really let go of that left brain of like judging what's this result going to be? Because people, when they think about art, they think about creating a specific vision. And in reality, there are so many insights that come out of the process that are so much richer and yield so much more than, I like to call it like a creative souvenir, which is beautiful a lot of times at the end of the process. So, and also like Hailey, what you were saying with, creativity being very spiritual. And I'm curious what you guys think. I'm finding like the quickest route to connecting to soul or connecting to spirit in order to really create what wants to be created that's like bigger than myself. The quickest route to get there is through embodiment, is through my body, like being open to intuition, which I receive through my body, like what color do I want to use, and just trusting. And it just, I don't know, that's what I'm finding, and it's still a practice for sure, but curious what you guys think.
I think that is beautiful, Jordan. And I love the phrase of creative souvenir. Oh my God, that's awesome, because it's something that you're going to, take away or take with you, take home, right? And of course, you're your own home as well. But yeah, the idea that it's what color am I going to use, or where am I going with this, or whatever. I don't care who sees it. I don't really necessarily need or want anybody to see it. It's for me. And so that kind of embodiment, as you put it, is like the key phrase that I use in my program as well, which is to embody the energy, the creativity, and the spirit of being alive, because you are a creative being. So the more you can embody all of that, you're going to need the energy for sure. And a lot of people say, oh, I don't have any energy for that, or, I'm out of energy or whatnot. Nobody really is, right? It doesn't ever go away. But then the creativity they think of as art. Well, I don't know what to do. Should I take photographs, or should I paint, or should I sculpt, or should I dance, or, just move. Just let the spirit move you, and you will experience what it means to truly be alive, because you're creating that kind of thing.
And that makes me think of how I do art therapy. So, a lot of people are like, what happens in art therapy? And to be honest, I don't know what a lot of other people do in art therapy, but what I do is I might give you a big tray and say, go around my space and just gather whatever grabs you. And yeah, it's like what Jordan said, your intuition is telling you through your body what you want to create. And it's incredible. People are like, well, actually most people like it and jump right into it. But occasionally people are like, well, without a plan, like, I don't know what I'm making. Like, just see what you gravitate towards. And, I have like pom-poms and old keys and stones and yarn and, recycled bubble wrap, and people just gather it all on their tray. And it's also just the abundance, right? Like all these messages around art and art materials being precious. Like, no, you can keep that tray as full as you want. And then you don't have to use it all. Just see from what you gather, from what your body tells you to gather, see what you want to create. And it's crazy because it already knows, like your intuition, your inner voice, it already knows. And so that's what I love about my job, is sitting there watching people put something together at it that didn't exist before, right? And sometimes I feel like I'm witnessing a miracle, it's like after half an hour, there's this creation that didn't exist before, that if they trust themselves, and that's why you have to have a good relationship, right? It's all about the relationship in any kind of therapy or coaching. If they feel safe, and if they feel totally accepted and that they belong, they will create very freely and very spontaneously. And then from that creation, we'll often get a major insight.
Yeah.
So that's...
I want to talk about this point of, it sounds like what you're saying is there's almost an unlearning of because my kid, 4 years old, it's amazing what he puts together. He'll just like pluck. I know he has no idea what's going on with his Legos. And at the end, he's created this amazing, the other day, he created a push cart, flight attendant push cart for the snack bar. And it was so intricate, but he doesn't know what's going on at first, right? And I find myself challenged to play with him sometimes, because I can see that I'm hooked on the plan or hooked on the strategy or something, that I can see it now as I listen to you. So there is almost an unlearning that has to happen, right? Where does this happen? Why do we lose our creativity? We are born with it. It is so, why do we lose it?
Yeah, that's a tough question. It's like that quote from Picasso, I think it was, right? It's like every child is born an artist, but to remain an artist is the difficult part. I got that all wrong, but
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's like sort of beaten out of us as we go along. Those art teachers or the mom or whatever. None of my artwork as a kid was ever posted on the refrigerator or was ever displayed anywhere. I did a whole lot through Girl Scouts and in classes at school and things like that. And somehow they were always just in the garage sale every year. I don't know. So, but what I think your question, Josette, is that Jordan answered beautifully, and that is trust. And the surrender, which we all know, I think, very well, in terms of just open yourself, offer up all that negative energy or all those blockages or that, learned conditioning, whatever it might be, and create whatever comes to you, right? Mm-hmm. Like Jordan said, what a color, what materials, like Hailey, all those kinds of things, just let it come.
Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting when we're little how easy it is to be creative. It's just like breathing, it comes naturally. We know we're amateurs and we're just like, well, what's possible? That might have been what's guiding your son. What's possible? Let me combine all these different things. Like when I was little, I would just, like 6 years old, I was writing like the pumpkin who didn't want to become a pie, writing like a full-length little book. And then, the Bat Boy series about a flying dog. I wrote like a series of little books when I was 6 years old. And then schoolwork became very intense. And so it was just this conditioning. And I learned from, I lived in a small town in Indiana, that the people who were successful were typically in the sciences or, in finance, and I took those cues. And so I think that my creative focus on creativity just started to kind of atrophy, because if we don't practice something, like, of course, like our language skills are going to get better than our creative or art skills because we just don't focus on it in school and then in culture too. So it's absolutely a process of, I think, deconditioning and unlearning that.
Yeah. And I have to touch on what Kristina said, like, to me, that's an art scar. Like you seeing your art that you cared about, that it meant something to you in the garage sale, or not seeing it on the fridge, like we get all these messages constantly. Sometimes I wonder where I would be if my parents weren't constantly like, oh, you're an artist. Like they told me what I was, right? Because whatever, I painted something that looked kind of realistic when I was like 4, and that was a message that I've constantly got. And, oh, you're not going to be good at math. And so I wasn't good at math. And, oh, you're an artist, so you're going to be an artist. And I am an artist. But, what I get pigeonholed in with a lot, at least in Canada, I don't imagine as much in California there, Jordan, but people hear art therapy and they think, oh, it's for kids, kids like art, let's put kids in art therapy. And sure, like it works really well for kids, but I want to work with adults because we are born, as we've all said, with this innate desire to create, and it does so much for our heart and soul and body and mind. And then we're just conditioned that if we're not good or we can't render realistically, that it's not worth anything. And Brene Brown says that unused creativity is not benign, right? It's not benign. Like it eats away at you. Like your unexpressed, your unlived life, right? And Josette, what's the main question for that? How do you live a soul
how do you live a soul expressed life? This is what we're asking.
Like,
yeah.
Like if and it doesn't have to be visual art, right? I think, you know,
That's my point.
yeah, exactly. But I mean, like, whatever it is, if yoga or movement or dance or cooking or anything where you're thinking a little bit outside the box, and you're basically, like, probably textbook definition of creativity is making something that didn't exist before, or like creating something out of nothing.
So interesting, because I mean, in California, okay, maybe not so much in like Hollywood and making movies and things like that. Obviously, creatives are very much valued. But okay, like in tech, it's interesting. So moving beyond just even like, you know, art therapy and artists, I remember how just there were these signaling cues that even designers were less value. Like just comments from my managers would just be like, oh, she's just a designer. So even within tech, the people who were on the creative side, the UI UX people, the front end people, received less respect on a very kind of like nuanced, like subtle level. And so it's so interesting how even, you know, in different industries, there is that kind of subtle, like low key, just like throwing shade at creatives. Yeah.
Well, this is super fascinating because what I'm hearing, that like all the different, I love that you're, you know, you have such different backgrounds, because what we're ultimately saying is that creative expression is an intuitive act, right? It's intuitive. Therefore, you have to be in tune with your intuition in order to feel in flow with your creative expression, right? It's so if you don't know, you know, if you don't have a relationship with your intuition, you're going to have, it's going to be challenging for you to get out of the box, as like Hailey was saying, and so on, and to create, as Kristina talks about, from the body, and Jordan too. So this also brings to mind, like, the dichotomy of intuitive is connected with divine feminine energy usually, right? Like, and more, I guess, Jordan, you correct me, I always mess up left, right brain. Left brain would be more strategic. Am I
Yes.
correct there?
Mm-hmm.
And the strategic is definitely more divine masculine. And we can also see the imbalance of those energies in our world, right? Where science and strategy is elevated, and intuition and, you know, that idea of surrendering and not acting is not valued. It's confusing and scary to people, right? Mm-hmm. And so on the grander scale, you know, this is what's at play. It's this kind of, I see it, creativity is it's a battle between these two, battles maybe a strong word, but it's a kind of, there's a balance trying to come in, but it's challenging. And this is why your work is so important, because you're helping people get back in tune with their innate skill of intuition through the action of creativity. It's so powerful. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then that is what is required to live a soul expressed life. It's one of the ways that we get there. And you, the three of you, are facilitators of that process. So now, there I can see the link. So the three of you are doing your own work at trying to get your clients and the people you work with to trust their intuitive skills, right? And I also hear a lot of healing is happening for your clients through this process. So I don't think we can get to our intuition without healing. I think that's part of the process. There's a healing that's required so that you get there. So I'm curious. There's two questions I want to explore. When did you discover the healing properties of creativity for yourself? And then the other question that leads into it, like, obviously, like, what are the healing effects of creativity? So you can choose to explore it from your own personal experience, or, you know, more from a general perspective.
I know definitely the first part of your question, Jo, is that, like, for me, I really started to discover the healing properties of creativity when I was so out of alignment with my work. And I was just working like pretty much kind of golden handcuffs. It was just like I was doing it for the promotion and for the money, and it was all strategy, all left brain. And my heart really just wasn't in it. And I was having conversations all day with engineers, and they were really bright people, but it was just, there was a creative element missing. And what started to happen was I was overriding my body to do this work. And you ignore your body for so long, and it's just going to start sending you stronger signals. And I actually started having back spasms, which were literally physically making it difficult to do so much screen time and work in tech. And it was really interesting because around that same time, I started to explore a lot more with just painting and watercolors and expression outward, because I had all this repressed creative energy. And I noticed that my back pain went away after I painted. And I was like, whoa, because I had been going to, physical trainers and doing the whole, medicating. But this was a tool that was just like, aha, I can literally just express out, connect with soul, paint, and my back pain went away. So I started noticing, wow, art can really heal. And ever since then, it's just been an exploration really of how can I take not only these healing properties, but these, how can I take the possibilities with art in different modalities and apply these to people who are maybe out of alignment and work. Pat B. Allen says, art is a way of knowing what we actually believe.
Yeah.
So even with something like that, for example, there's all this like coaching advice out there for something like reframing our inner narrative. So, maybe you're not feeling like, you're good enough or something like that. Reframe what you're telling yourself. But that's still very, very left brain. What if we could bring in, an exercise that's actually joyful and fun, like art, to give us a visual for how we actually really, to kind of upgrade our inner narrative in a visual way that's so much more powerful. So these are the things that I'm working on developing, because I just see so many possibilities for healing, but also for rebalancing, instead of having to look at all these blueprints for how to, plan our businesses and things like that from the left brain side, because people are getting exhausted. My clients are exhausted. How can we bring in these fun right brain exercises and rebalance and approach this from a holistic, direction?
Mm-hmm.
I have a question, Jordan. When you realized that, like when you took the step to start painting as a connection to your back pain, did you already have a sense of your soul and intuition, or were you learning about that at the same time? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that I was doing a lot of work at the time around spirituality necessarily. I was just really in my head. And I think I was like, in therapy at the time. And I think my therapist just encouraged my creative side, and she was just kind of like, obviously the tech stuff isn't working, and it was just about expressing that out. And it was through expressing the pain of this misalignment in my work that it was real. It became real. It wasn't like, oh, there's something wrong with me, I should be able to contort myself to this. It was like, oh, my soul needs more. I'm bigger than this. I'm outgrowing this.
Okay.
So some of those messages came through, but I wasn't doing a whole lot of specifically intuition development or soul work.
Okay. Okay. That's so cool. Thank you. Yeah. Hailey, Kristina, how about you? The healing journey.
And just to say, like, that's where Western medicine can work against us, because like, oh, just take medication to like numb that back pain out, or like seeing it as if a failure could be reframed as like you're a failure because you can't keep up. Well, it's not natural the way we're supposed to sit in front of screens and spend the amount of time we're supposed to spend in productivity. Like productivity, that's the funny thing. If our world wants us to be more productive and more effective and happier employees, then we need more breaks. We need more time for play and we need more creativity. And, I keep mentioning Brene Brown, but like a lot of her work really aligns, like a lot of her work around vulnerability aligns with creativity. And she works with a lot of businesses because they're like, well, how can we make more innovative products? And she's like, well, first of all, you got to get rid of the culture of fear in your workplace because our culture says that you can't fail or you can't do anything to look bad or look stupid. Well, then nobody's going to try anything new. Right? Yeah, I don't know if Kristina, if you had an answer.
Well, I agree with you. And I think that on top of that, it's the way we've always done it, right? So don't go outside the box, right? So, and I think a lot of people think anything outside the box is scary, or what if I look stupid or I fail or whatever. And so the fear stops them from going there. But in terms of my personal experience, I feel like, or I think, okay, maybe it's mindedness, but I think I've always known that creativity had healing properties, but I didn't call on them, even though God knows I needed to. I needed it to save me and so on. But I had already jumped in that river of denial, who was saying, because creativity to me at the time meant art, like making art. And I tried that and it didn't have any impact, or that I could see, right, as a kid or whatever. So I just thought, no, that means artistic ability. I don't have that. So therefore nothing. Until as an adult, thank God, I focused on the process of creating whatever I wanted, not artwork, not a sculpture, not a painting, not a dance or a song or whatever. I just started focusing on the process of the experience of creating whatever it is that I wanted. And I think it was you, Hailey, that said something about render a realistic rendering of something, right? I love that term because, as I said before, real life is creative life. So I am creating a realistic rendering of whatever it is that I want, right? And it doesn't have to be something that I'm going to put on the fridge or, on the wall or whatever. So I think until that time, I didn't, I felt it growing up and all through, but not until that time. And that was not so long ago, actually. I'm going to say like 2014, right? That I finally got it. And it was like, I don't have to be an artist, quote, end of quote or whatever. I can create whatever I want to, and I can feel that process. My intuition is telling me to do this, and I'm called to do it. Therefore, I'm going to do it. And that's when the healing, saving, and feeling of how transformative it really is, right? Creationary work, creativity, whatever you want to call it. It's totally transformative. So that's when I felt.
What might be an example, Kristina? I'd love to hear an example of like something you might create.
I create experiences, right? So again, it's that realistic rendering that you're talking about. It's like, well, realistically, I have to make dinner, and I have to make it every day for 5 days or 7 days a week or whatever. Who cares, right? I can put 3 things on a plate and somebody's going to be fine because, it's going to sustain us or whatever. But is that really creative? No. So I then began to play with my food and start saying, oh, let's see. I'm just going to eat all white food today, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And tomorrow I'll eat all red food. And on Wednesday, I'll eat all green food, or, whatever it might be. So that's an example.
That is really creative. Yeah.
Because we all eat, but, and we all have to make something to eat, right? But I just didn't want it to be that kind of mundane, like this is left brain bullshit. I don't want to go there.
Yeah, if you ever, anyone listening in Jordan and Hailey want an idea of what Kristina's talking about, her Kaleidoscope newsletter that she puts out every Friday, Kristina, is that correct?
Friday mornings, right?
it's a complete expression of what she's talking about, because every, like, there's a theme to every one of them, but also like, it just, how creativity can be infused in every part of your life. Like,
Whoa.
right? Am I saying that correctly,
Yeah,
Kristina?
yeah, that's good description. Can I hire you for promotion?
Well, I'm here. Yeah, that's my creative
Yeah.
deal. I'm making these things. Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that
So
Kristina's part of the conversation because, as I said it earlier, like we think too narrowly about creativity, and it's easy for people to, oh, Hailey's an art therapist, oh, creativity, oh, art, and easily say, well, that's not for me,
Mm.
and we need ideas from people like Kristina to, stir up people's imagination of how we can be more creative in our everyday life.
Yeah,
Yeah,
just
that's
little,
where-
just little sparks, because people, and I think when you were talking about the healing properties of creativity, I think before that there needs to be an attitude adjustment, in terms of semantics or terminology or whatever. Because just like Hailey said, oh, they think, oh, Hailey, she's an art therapist. She has something that I don't, because she's an artist, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Because people think of creativity as art, as opposed to, how about just, messing with your meals and, or, lighting fire to something that wouldn't normally be, in your midst or whatever. So,
Or like how you get dressed in the morning,
Exactly. Oh my God. Yeah.
So good.
So,
so good. So I'm curious, Hailey and Jordan, how do you do anything of what Kristina just said? Like, do you infuse creativity into your daily tasks? Does that come through for you?
I mean, for me, it's I'm very, very visual, and so I need to go for walks every day in nature, and I'm lucky enough that I live near a river. And for me, it's just like seeing the beauty in things.
mm.
And now I don't know if it's like I'm creating something, but I'm just, to me, so for me, in order to be creative, I need to connect, right? And by connect, I mean connect with nature. And so for me, it's just noticing and finding awe and finding gratitude in the beauty that's really all around us. Even if you're like in New York City in an apartment and you have a plant, you can find awe and beauty in that plant, and yeah, just the daily walks, but it takes for me, I'm still at the point where, yeah, in my day-to-day life, I have to like make an effort or think about it to get creative. Like, I think I kind of reserve my creativity sometimes for visual art, which I think is, yeah, unfortunate.
Yeah, I think I definitely try to refill my well, like you were saying, Hailey, like with nature and just going to art shows too and seeing what other artists are doing. But actually, what's been really liberating that I'm playing around with, which is really interesting, is setting creative intentions. So that sounds like, but that's like kind of structured. But really what it does is it just allows you to jump in more quickly, because there's not all of this kind of vague, well, why am I doing this creative thing? So before I create, it's like, it can be a simple creative intention that's like, I'm going to play around with clay because I haven't played with clay in a while, or I'm going to use this technique where I use a spray bottle with water and just watch the paint drip and see what that looks like. So by breaking it down with a creative intention and doing something very simple, it gets any sort of resistance out of the way, because I'm automatically just focused on something very doable that's accessible and fun and that I'm already curious about, instead of like this broader, like, well, let me create this, render something, perfectly or whatever. And so that also like helps with the kind of spiritual connection too, because a lot of times I'll start that creative intention with like a very heart-based, like, what is asking to be created, self-inquiry, but it's also kind of connected to something bigger than me. And then it's kind of fun because as a business coach too, I can set some boundaries with the creative intention too, because there's so much like creativity that goes into running a business too. So it's like, am I creating this to create as much value as possible as a product or as a service? Or am I going to use this like 20 minutes that I have just to create for myself? And that's really liberating too, because you don't have that running like, well, I should be doing something else, or no, this is my time, and it doesn't get convoluted.
Mm.
Ooh, so it sounds, Jordan, what you're saying, it sounds a little bit like the mindset, the mind shift that Kristina was talking about, like before we can get into that creative space, we have to know that we can. And so do you find that, setting that intention of, okay, I'm going to play with clay, or I'm going to play with this spray bottle, like having the awareness that you have those tools is something too, right? Like, it's like, how do you get, is this something you do? Is it only for yourself, or do you suggest that to your clients too?
Oh, I suggest it to my clients, but if they don't have all the art supplies right there with them or whatever, it can be, I've told people just like, you can use an intention that's just like, I'm going to fuck up the page. It can be something that's just like, and another thing like, pick a color that you think is ugly, because it's very surprising, like what we think is going to look so bad or, so gross, using brown or whatever, it can actually surprisingly look really cool. So anything like that you can use to kind of just like break through the resistance and just start.
I love that. I totally love that. It reminded me of Carrie Smith, who's like wrecked this journal and living out loud and all that, right? So I think she calls it conceptual art, so it's art, but it's like, peel the stickers off your bananas and your grapefruit and your oranges or whatever, and make some kind of collage out of that shit. So I love that. It's like, wreck this page, right? Like you said, Jordan, or pick some color. Like I would totally, the color I hate is colorless in my mind, which is grayish, right? Like that putty color filing cabinet, which would be, I'm sure they exist in your world, right? The putty colored filing cabinets in a corporate office or something. So I'm like, let's doctor these babies up. Let's like key them like you would the side of a car of your ex who, ran off with somebody else. So I think let's do
it. Was there some healing there?
There's always healing in that case.
I love it. Oh, amazing.
Yeah, I'm just, I'll answer my own question. I feel the thinking about creativity in my daily life, I've just started doing it with food, and it's been a game changer, because it's always been a slog of like, especially with having a kid now. It's like, oh my God, what am I gonna make for keeping people alive? Like it's just so I've noticed if I prepare at the beginning of the week, and I just cut a lot of stuff at the beginning of the week, then in the middle of the week, I'm almost like, oh, I could put these two together. That's interesting, But Hailey, to your point of going out on walks, and filling the well, and this points to the creative process, right? And you all have talked about the process of creativity being the most important thing than the end result. So yeah, let's dissect the process. Like what's involved. For me, absolutely. Like right after this talk, where I'm going to go for a walk, because I feel a lot of energy rushing through my body. I know that I have to make something or move when I feel anxiety and like a lot of energy in my body. That's an indication that I have to do something active and creative. But yeah, like what's the process? Where does it begin? I guess it's like, there's no beginning. It's just, it starts. Yeah. Kristina, what do you think? Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say that for me, there's the greatest creative breakthrough that I've ever made is the discovery of how a simple earthing episode. So again, out in nature, grounding with the earth, completely opens and transforms me and allows fresh new ideas to come in. So walking, I do a daily clarity walk. Last year I called it a clarity walk. This year I'm calling it an awe walk, so that I try to find 3 things that I'm in awe of, right? Mm-hmm. So at least 3 things. It's very easy to do here in my happy place of colorful Colorado, but that definitely is what I'm talking about. And the more that you can actually come in direct contact with the earth through barefoot walking, clearly it's winter here, but still, or bare hands, any kind of your bare skin touching the earth is going to ground you and neutralize, those electrons, the electricity between us, so that you can feel like this is my home. I am my home. And I'm here to create my life. So that's how I do it as well. So I love the fact that you mentioned walking. And I think we're all, I know Jordan is a hiker as well, and really finds a lot of good inspiration and stuff like that. And so it is, I guess, inspiration is the start, right? But I have this journal that on the front cover, which I made myself, that says inspiration without action is just bullshit. So not to discount inspiration, because it does have the word spirit in it, but
yeah,
again, you can go out on those walks and you can gather all the ideas, but what are you going to do with them? So whether that means creating something, tangible or product, or if it's creating some process for yourself, or playing, to manipulate and transform, whatever that may be. So that's how I start.
Yeah. In the Paint Your Inner Voice process, which is my signature kind of creative process that I created, we always start with like a check-in in the group. And so like if I think about, like labeling the steps of the process, first is like just welcoming, fostering a sense of belonging, feeling like accepted in who you are. I think that it's very hard to create when you don't feel you can be yourself. You don't, like when there's a lack of authenticity. And so really creating that container that the group feels safe. And so if you're creating on your own, like that could look like, lighting a candle or doing something that reminds you like of your intention, kind of like what Jordan was saying, of like, hey, this is my spiritual time. This is my time to be authentically me. And then in the group, before we go into the painting process, I always lead people through a guided meditation or visualization, and the body's always involved. So it's like breathing, like, okay, like come back to your breath, feel your breath within you, and see where like there's tension, adjust your body. And then like, is there a release from that? And then also like when you just kind of drop your attention down from your cognitive space, your left brain, and more into your body, what comes up for you? And because I feel like it doesn't, another myth around creativity is you got to be Van Gogh, or you got to be like practically, insane to get inspiration or get creative impulses or visions, or it's just below the surface. To me, it's, what I like to show people through the Paint Your Inner Voice process is it's just, your inner voice is always, always there. It's just below the surface. And all you have to do is pay a little bit of attention and allow your hand to like gravitate. And then again, there's your body, right? Your body telling you, oh, I want this color and I have no freaking idea why, but I don't have to know why. And so like, it just goes against, it flies in the face of, like things having to make sense, the linear process, the meaning, letting go of control. It seems like such a simple process. You get together in a group and you paint on paper, and it needs to be on paper, because when people go on canvas, they get all super like anal retentive about, oh, I can't wreck this canvas, and it just kind of lays bare for people. This is a 60-cent piece of paper, and these are like cheap dollar store paints. And can I just like let whatever the heck wants to come up on the paper. And even then, the answer can sometimes be no, like we're so blocked. And so I do talk about paint your inner voice as a process or a practice, because it's something that doesn't necessarily come easily, even though, as I said, that your inner voice and your creativity is just there, just below the surface. Being able to drop into a place of trust and trusting, letting the unknown, we're so afraid of the unknown, letting the unknown emerge in front of you on this blank piece of paper. Like what's the worst that could happen? Really, and we're still afraid to do it. And so I guide people in that, and I try and help them get unblocked. But yeah, the process to me usually involves the creative process for me usually involves some kind of, feeling of belonging, acceptance, safety, but safe to be you, if that makes sense. Not safe as in I'm going to control everything.
Yeah.
And then meditation or some kind of centering. That's how I get into the process.
Okay. And as somebody who participated in her program, in Hailey's program, I think four times.
Oh, more than that. Yeah.
Was it? It was so interesting talking about intuitive and that, like, under the surface, and this was never the intention, but at the end, like, three of us would have like similar images, or like there was I'm getting chills. Like there was a mate, like somebody would explain it. I was like, wow, that's exactly what I was thinking. That was like, and it was, that's the power. That's the power of that intuitive. It's proof in a way it is real. It is like you can't see it, but it is there. And we all have that intuitive power. Yeah.
Sorry, I saw that happen in person before the pandemic. I saw that happen in person a lot. And I was like, oh yeah, of course, we're all in the same room together. But now I'm seeing that happen through Zoom, where one person's in Korea, one person's in the United States. So yeah, there's something about tapping into that intuition. Sorry, Kristina.
No, it happened. I was just gonna say it happened to me too. I also have taken the Paint Your Inner Voice class with Hailey, and she's awesome. You were great at that guidance, right? Because when we approach it, we think, oh, we're going to an art class today with our girlfriends, or, and it's like, nope. You're going to have to listen. You're going to have to tune in. You're going to have to tap in and then let it out, So, and she's awesome at that. But
thank you.
I took a friend, or I paid for a friend to take the class with me, and we happened to be in the same room or whatever, but we're all on Zoom. And the same thing, when it came time to kind of interpret or whatever, what had come out, it was like we both drew these peacocks, or peacock-like kind of figures, or, swirls or whatnot. Right. And then I had some knowledge about some of the transformative purification that a peacock kind of represents, because they eat these toxic, venomous things that actually produce that beautiful plumage that they have, right? So it was like, okay, I was clearly eating that toxic shit, and here it came out on the page. I totally kept it though, I'm gonna put it on my fridge later, but.
Amazing. Yeah, put it on your fridge.
I'm gonna put it on my fridge.
Oh, wow. Amazing. How about Jordan? Anything on the process or anything inspiring that you want to add to this, what you've heard?
I'm glad you brought up energetics and just energy, Josette, because, I work with a lot of people who are empaths or very sensitive. And I think that that's just such an important piece to the overall, I guess, creative process, is just making sure that your energy is able to kind of flow freely, and that you're taking care to kind of cleanse. I know for me, I have to do like hot Epsom salt baths and things like that, just because I pick up, negative shit from the collective that I just have to routinely take care of, so that when it comes, that next step in the process to kind of fill my well with inspiration and things like that, I'm open to it. I'm not clogged up with these other things. And then from the inspiration process, then it's like the next step is that inquiry of like, well, what if I did this? Or what if I, used that little tendril pattern that I saw in nature, like in a drawing, but connected. So it's just this sort of like, what if? And Kristina and Hailey, what you guys were talking about, it almost sounded like, well, Hailey, you set this beautiful container, it sounds like. And it's so fascinating to me that people are literally creating similar images and things like that. So it's almost like this tapping into the unified field. So this whole inquiry isn't necessarily just what do I individually need to create, but like what's out there that, I can tap into, that the universe kind of needs me to create. So it's about that rebalancing too. Then the next step is just experimenting and playing in that no judgment, the judgment-free zone. Now the inner critic it's going to come up. So it's not about like, I don't know, killing the inner critic or anything, but just, having that awareness that I'm not going to like judge myself. I'm not going to let it stop me. It's just going to come up. And I've been into more recently taking like video of my creative process and my art making and playing around with that because I want to share, working on my visibility issues, and then iterating on it. Because I think that it's almost difficult. I'm like sitting here, what is my like creative process? Because it's not linear, and we're always kind of just like pendulating and adding new layers and, exploring these synchronicities and tapping into the unified field. So yeah, it's still just like a work in progress, figuring it out.
Yeah. I think this is the point, and the creative process is, I love what you said. It's not linear. I find for me, the creative part of the creative process is just knowing that the inner critic will come in and just acknowledging that and saying, hey, I see you. Just like, I see what you're doing, and not attaching to it. I think if that's the only thing I can do in my creative process, then I've won. Or my creative process has won, because everything else. Yeah.
I call that bitch slapping your ego.
Yeah. Bye. Yeah.
And I think that not waiting till it, like if you wait until your inner critic is silent, like that's never gonna happen. You got to just go forth.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go forth. And so as we wrap up here, I think, tapping into the topic of the unified field, how creativity is for the self, but also when we are in that space of intuitive space of creating something, that we're actually tapping into the energy of the earth, that we are elevating the energy. So how do you feel creativity is going to support us in this, in healing the earth, in healing ourselves as we move forward in these insane times, right? Yeah. I mean, I know that every time it's not like we've ever lived in a sane time, but, with the pandemic and everything that we've been experiencing, how does creativity support us all to just get beyond that? That's a big question.
I think that we're up for some massive challenges just as humanity, with climate change coming and these wars on the horizon, and like we have to, like, this is one I'm glad you asked that, because I wanted to come back from the beginning, where people say creativity is just fluff and it's not important. Like, our survival depends on it, and we can't, like, I think Albert Einstein said, you can't solve the same problems
same way of thinking.
What was it?
You can't solve the same problems with the same way of thinking.
Yeah, we need whole new ways of thinking, whole new ways of living on the planet, whole new ways of problem solving, of approaching things. And one of the ways that we need whole new ways of is white male patriarchy. Like, it's on its way out, and that's why there's so much resistance right now, right? And like the feminine coming in, we're ushering it in. We need it to come in every possible way it can, whether it's through painting on your own for your own self-care, or scientists learning from Brene Brown how to get more creative and get more vulnerable. Like on every level, I think we need more creativity if we're going to survive as a human race.
Creativity is just like one of those last fields where it really can't be automated. And because it teaches us, can't be automated, we're still going to need humans to do it. It's one of those fields that, you know, still teaches like embodiment and connection to source. So it's not just creativity and acting and making, it's inspired and, you know, divinely sourced creativity that's going to come in. And that's what we're really going to need to awaken to. And I think a lot of people are really rapidly waking up to it and starting to realize, wow, okay, this is a very basic part of my humanity. This is an ancient, you know, art making is like an ancient wisdom, and people are waking up to the wisdom that creativity gives them. And we're going to really need to leverage that, because we definitely have some things on the horizon. So we're going to need our, you know, creative people to come together.
Mm-hmm. And not just our artists, right? Like like engineers that you used to work with, right? Like everybody who's going to solve these problems is going to have to start thinking in a whole new way.
And that's my point exactly, is that creativity, I think it's that word is misinterpreted often because people think it means artistic ability or talent or, you know, giftedness in that sense, right? And yet, I think they also think of it like money, right? Everybody wants more of it, right? Because Hailey's an artist, so I don't have that. I want to be able to do that, right? So people want it. So, and yet they quantify it or try to measure it in amounts of, right? Somebody has more than they do, and so on and so forth. So if we could get them to think about it in terms of, since they're already thinking about it, I guess, in terms of a scarcity kind of commodity, why not go after it, right? Everybody wants more money and they're willing to do just about anything to get more money, right? So how about we look at it like that, you know, and get people to do just about anything that they can to get more creative thinking going, to solve the problems of the world, because creativity isn't just for making art. It is for solving problems and for creating your best experience, as you know, your best human experience. You are a spiritual being. We all are. Again, all that kind of attitude and mindset and a different way of, I think Jordan said, reframing it, right? This isn't about how artistic can you be and who's going to win the art gallery contest or whatever. This is how can you use this creative thinking to solve problems like climate change and the war zones and these kinds of big issues that we're dealing with. Again, as Josette said, there will always be big issues, but the fresher, newer, more ideas that we can bring, the better off we're all going to be. This experience is going to be a whole lot more enjoyable, colorful, spiritual, and meaningful. So,
so beautiful. The words that come to mind for me are creativity and compassion are going to lead, you know, that lead the future. It's the only things that can lead the future. And so I know the three of you have exactly that. This is why you are doing the work you are doing. I know it. I'm so grateful you're doing the work you're doing. I want you to please continue doing it. And because you are going to support the people who have no idea how to tap into that creativity. It is so required, and nobody needs to be scared. You have helpers like Hailey, Kristina, and Jordan. You don't have to do it alone. And you have the power to change your life through this process of through this exploration of your creative being. So on that note, we're gonna say goodbye. And thank you so much for being here. And everyone who's listening, you can access the information on these three women in the show notes. You can contact them, get on their newsletters, follow them on social media. All that information is in the show notes. And yeah, that's it. All right. So thank you so much.
Thank you.